And joining me now is a very special guest. I'm joined by one of Nepal's leading journalists. Yuvraj Ghimire has written on his country for several years. He's joining me now in the national capital, New Delhi. Appreciate, Yuvraj, you joining us. I want to ask you at the very outset, are you surprised yourself by the scale and intensity of the protests we witnessed in the last 48 hours, especially on Monday and Tuesday? Did it catch you and others by surprise?
Not really, not on the scale of the protest, but the scale of violence the government resorted to that was unprecedented and unacceptable. That has flared up the situation, and I think it will take much longer than we think to, that everything comes to normal situation.
So what you're saying is interesting. You're saying it was actually the targeting of the protesters on day one, the killings of 20 people by the state, that has angered people enough to hit the street. Had this been handled better, it may not have escalated. But what explains this level of anger, Yuvraj? Is this been something simmering like a volcano below waiting to erupt? Was the social media ban the real trigger, or was something building up for a while?
Many things together. Rajdeep, one was this corruption, the image of political leaders, top political leaders in the opposition as well as the ruling party, that was very transparent.
They were seen as transparently corrupt.
Transparently corrupt. I've been writing and I've been saying that if there is one thing transparent in Nepal, that's corruption. And the leaders' tainted image, they never took this criticism in right spirit. They never tried to address it. Second, after what has been happening in the US, the dream destination of people, young people of this region, including Nepal, when they are finding it difficult, they want to create their future in congenial atmosphere for themselves in their own country. But this corruption at the highest level and lack of sensitivity among the rulers, that came in the way, and they're very angry about it. And so when the government, and social media was an effective forum to discuss all these things. So when the government banned the social media to protect themselves and their image, I think they decided to come on the street, but it was provoked by the government unrestrained response by violence
and this corruption is across the board. It's not as if one political party is better than the other. You've had 9 governments in the last 10 years. Is this built into the system in a way now?
They have injected much bigger doses in the system. And not only that they are corrupt, they have together authored a way of being immune, like preventing any kind of investigation into corruption in high places.
There can be no investigation into corruption in high places.
Yes.
You were pointing out to me before you came on the show that ministers and prime ministers cannot be investigated in Nepal.
Yes, what they have said is anything that is a policy decision. And in their definition, policy decision is any decision taken by the cabinet. So any minister who can autonomously take a decision, takes it to the cabinet, gets it approved, and prevents all the possibilities of those irregularities being investigated in future.
Am I right in saying that this movement has been leaderless? That there is no one leader out there who represented this Gen Z? There's been talk of the mayor of Kathmandu, Balen Shah, the rapper turned politician, that he is in a way the face of the or is someone who's admired by a lot of the youth protesters, but there is no leadership, is there? Or is Balen Shah a potential leader of the future?
No, unfortunately, that is the case. A movement not having a leader, not being guided by command and control system, at times becomes dangerous. Yes, Balen is popular because he is independent. He doesn't belong to any political parties which are perceived as corrupt. And Balen also played a catalyst role in this movement in the sense that, he said, but politically he has taken a very anti-Oli position there. But and he said, I am past 28, I don't belong to your generation, so you lead it, but my supports are there. That really helped people to get mobilized. They saw a face in Balen there, but Balen has definitely not been tested. He doesn't have any other past experience, but he is a well-known figure, a popular figure among the youth, and the fact that he took position against Oli.
And very interestingly now, the Gen Z protesters have started an online poll and they are claiming that Sushila Karki, the former Chief Justice, will now become the acting Prime Minister. Do you see that happening? Who is she? Is she a crusader against corruption?
I'll say that Sushila Karki is the first woman Chief Justice and would be the first woman Prime Minister in Nepal.
She will be the Prime Minister.
Yeah. And the connect is because after she demitted the office 7 years ago, she publicly started speaking against corruption, and there is a connectivity, this anti-corruption movement, and she has that image. But she doesn't have definitely the experience of running the country, holding ministerial position in the past, but that image, and she was very critical of the political interference in judiciary, the corruption, and so she must have got the imagination.
What role do you see, Yuvraj, the army playing? They've taken over the streets at the moment to maintain law and order, but you don't see the army playing any greater role. Will now they just allow an interim government, hold fresh elections, maybe even change the constitution? Do you see that happening?
Yeah, I think for all practical purposes, this constitution is gone, this system is gone.
Constitution is gone?
Is gone.
So the 2015 constitution
is gone.
Will there be a new constitution?
Yeah, it has to be. There has to be a new constitution because a president and prime minister, all the judges, are being protected by army in unknown camps, and no visible visibility of the government in one place. Then army takes the control of the situation under whose command we don't know. So this constitution is gone. But army for the first time in Nepal has accepted a political role under a general consensus. That is something new, because with political parties perceived as corrupt, their leaders perceived as corrupt, the army appears to be the only state-bearing institution in the country at the moment. So they are playing that role.
You know, what we saw, Yuvraj, in Bangladesh last year was that the student protests also turned somewhere into anti-India protests. Will we see that in Nepal? Is that a fear? Or these protests are not about India at all? They are about problems of Nepal, poverty, unemployment, misgovernance, nepotism, the problems of Nepal, not directed at India.
Yeah, Rajdeep, the present moment is definitely against corruption in high places in Nepal. But Nepal is definitely a strategically important place for any stakeholders, distant and far neighbors, like US has its, India is there, China is there, and in any emerging situation, the stakeholder external forces will, accept that position and try to further their interest. But Nepalese have seen that 2006 situation was bungled, because when Maoist peace process began to bring the Maoists to the main political spectrum, one side of the conflict that included monarchy and traditional forces, they were excluded. It doesn't happen anywhere. It was like South Africa's, like Nelson Mandela not wanting to work with the apartheid regime for, that Nepal is paying the price for that, and India's role was quite negative in that sense. Up to, bringing parties together for peace process was appreciated. But when you insist that one section of the conflict is not included, then that spoiled the whole thing.
So therefore what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is this is an eruption of anger that has been triggered by a long period of corruption and no accountability in the system.
Yes.
You believe it will lead to a change in the constitution of Nepal. You believe that the Chief Justice will become an acting Prime Minister.
Yes.
And maybe 6-12 months down the line, Nepal will have a fresh election where maybe some of these young faces will actually take prominent positions in government. Do you see this
youth revolution actually resulting in a new kind of politics for Nepal? I think I hope so. But one thing they have to be clear that like you were interviewing one of the protester, and they have to own the responsibility for this violence. They have to condemn it. They have to bring the culprits to justice. Otherwise, a movement not under control of its leaders spoils.
So who was responsible for the violence? You believe that some of these protesters included anti-social element, there were jailbreaks, there were a hotel, the Marriott hotel was burned. Did anti-social elements take it over?
Yes, I think these, young people who were, looking at the corruption angle, they didn't realize there are many dimensions, there are possibilities of infiltration of vested political groups, there are a possibility of infiltration by criminals and all that. They didn't anticipate this. But that it has happened now, they should at least ensure, now that they will be having an influence in the government, they must ensure that the culprits are brought to justice.
One final question. Are you more optimistic about Nepal's future as a result of the last 72 hours? Or do you fear that Nepal is heading for chronic instability?
I'd say that I'm optimistic in the sense that youth have started thinking about their future and the future of the country, and they have come on the street. They should be careful, but it gives space for hope.
And also, interestingly, Yuvraj, you told me it all started with one Facebook post. One Facebook post, tomorrow's Nepal, or worded along those lines, triggered this revolution. In that sense, Nepal has set a precedent. This could be called, at least in South Asia, possibly the first kind of digital revolution that we've seen.
Yeah, digital, space becomes very vibrant and sometimes constructive and sometimes destructive forum for debate and seeking addressal to many problems. Let's hope where it goes.
Okay. Yuvraj Ghimire, for giving us your perspective as someone who's tracked your country for many years. All I can wish is your wonderful, beautiful country returns to calm sooner rather than later. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.